name is Amanda Corbett, and I'm the creator behind Starlight Stitching Co. First, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for purchasing my pattern and helping me support my family. Thank you very much. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a patchwork version of my cross-stitch clutch. So let's get started. To get started on your cross-stitch clutch, what you'll need is your stabilizer, your batting, your felt, zipper, vinyl, your 2.5-inch squares that you're going to use, your binding strip, your top zipper or bottom zipper fabric, and your top zipper fabric, a quilting ruler, an awl for poking the holes for the snaps, a pen for marking, a Teflon sewing machine foot, a 1/4-inch sewing machine foot, a zipper foot, the plier tools for setting your snaps, as well as your snaps. Down, Lulu. The bottom zipper fabric, top zipper fabric, and binding I have already pressed in half, so they are ready to use. For our first step, we're going to lay out our squares. So for the back of the clutch, you will need 5 rows of 4. Okay? And we are going to just sew these together into rows. Now I've got my rows all sewn together. So next I'm going to press them. When you're pressing, you want to press one row of seams to the left and the next row of seams to the right to allow them to nest together. So my bottom is going to the left, this next row is going to the right, this row will go to the left, Now I'm ready to pin my rows together. So maybe you can see better. This row I've got going to the right, and this row I've got the seams going to the left. And we're just going to fit these two together like puzzle pieces. And that will help you keep your seams aligned. I'm going to pin right at that seam. Now that we've got them pinned, we'll take them back to the sewing machine and sew. Now that we've got these sewn together, I'm going to press these seams open. That just reduces any bulk so you don't have any large nebby points on the back side of your clutch once you have it finished. Now that I've got those pressed, I'm going to place these two together. And pin. And while I'm at it, I'm going to pin the last row on. Then we'll take this to the sewing machine. Now we'll press these two seams open. And then give it a press from the front. Now the back piece for our cross stitch clutch is complete. So next we'll move on to the piece for the pockets, for the one pocket. For this one you will need 4 rows of 4 squares. And just like we did for the front, or for the back piece, we're going to sew these together into rows, and then sew the rows together. Just like before, we're going to press the seams in alternating directions. Nest your seams and pin your rows together. Just like before, we're going to press the seams open. Now we're going to pin these two pieces together. Now, since this is for our pocket, instead of pressing this middle seam open, I'm going to press it to one side. And then we are going to fold it in half on the front. And press it in half. Now I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch away from this folded edge, and you can decide which side you want to have as the front of your pocket and which one you want as the inside of your pocket. Now your pocket is all ready to go, and we can set it aside. Next, we're going to grab our batting, and we're going to layer on top our stabilizer, lining up the edges. And then we're going to lay our patchwork piece on top. Now, your patchwork may end up being a little bit longer than your batting and your stabilizers, so make sure you just line up one end and allow it to hang over on the other end. then we're just going to clip this in place. Alright, and I'm going to sew around all 4 sides an 1/8 inch away from the edge. And this is just going to hold all the layers together. You want to lay it on your sewing machine bed with the fabric side down on your table and the batting side up, because the feed dogs don't really like to grab the batting to pull it through. Woo-woo. So when you get to the corner, stop with your needle down, turn, and keep sewing. Now that we've got the layers sewn together around all 4 sides, take a quilting ruler and a rotary cutter and line it up with the edge of your stabilizer and trim off any excess. Okay. Next, we are ready to put in our snaps. So I am going to take a small quilting ruler and my awl that came with my snap setting tools, and I'm going to measure 1 inch from the corner, and that is where I'm going to poke my hole. Once you have your hole, you can insert the snap back through the hole, poke it through the material, and then put the inside part of your snap on, place it in your tool, and squeeze the tool shut. Okay? And we're going to repeat that for the rest of the snaps. And now I have all 4 of my snaps done. One thing that you want to make sure of is make sure you have both of the male snaps on the same short side and both of the female snaps on the same short side, because when it's done, it's going to close like this. Okay, now we're ready to work on our zipper pieces. So before we begin sewing anything on our zipper, I'm going to take a quilting ruler and line it up in 1/8 inch from the edge of the zipper fabric, and I'm going to mark a line. And you're going to do that on both sides. And this is with the zipper pull up. Alright, now we're ready to take our zipper and our zipper fabric pieces to the sewing machine. I've exchanged my regular 1/4 inch sewing machine foot for my zipper foot. And now I'm going to take my top zipper fabric and I'm going to line up the raw edge of the fabric where it's folded together. I'm going to line up the raw edge on that line that we just drew. And I'm going to run that through the sewing machine with the zipper foot. Now I'm just going to finger press this fabric away from the edge of the zipper. You don't want to use an iron because you don't want a chance of melting any of your zipper parts. And I'm going to turn it around and take my top zipper fabric and same thing, line up the raw edges with the line that you drew on your zipper. And I'm also lining it up with my bottom zipper fabric. And then I'm going to finger press that away from the zipper. So at this point I'm going to switch back to my 1/4 inch sewing machine foot, and I'm just going to sew a 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the fabric all the way down my top zipper fabric. Now we're going to do the same thing with our bottom zipper fabric, except before we sew, we're going to take our vinyl and place it inside our bottom zipper fabric, trying to get the vinyl pushed all the way back against that fold of the fabric. And we're going to sew right on top of that, a 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the fabric, just like you did on the other side. Alright, and now your vinyl pocket is ready to go on your clutch. So you're going to take your clutch back, and at this point you need to decide which half you want to have visible on the outside, because one section is going to be covered by your pocket. So I think I'm going to have this side visible and this side covered with the pocket. So I'm going to take a quilting ruler and I'm going to line the 4 3/4 inch mark up with this bottom edge of the clutch, and I'm just going to mark a line across the clutch. And I'm going to take our vinyl pocket that we just sewed, I'm going to flip it right side down, and I'm going to line up this folded edge with that line that I just marked. And I'm going to clip that pocket in place. When you have your pocket lined up with that mark that you just made, your vinyl should extend past the edge of your clutch by a little bit. If it's even with the edge, then you didn't get it positioned right. So now I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew a quarter of an inch away from this fold here. Right, I'm ready to unclip that. So next I'm going to lay my pocket on top of the bottom of my clutch. And I'm going to fold the vinyl over that. It should end up being pretty close to be even with the edge of your clutch. And I'm going to clip this in place. If you have it, now would be a good time to switch to a Teflon sewing machine foot. That will keep the vinyl from sticking to your sewing machine foot. If you don't have a Teflon sewing machine foot, you could always just place some washi tape down over the edges here, and that'll help keep it from sticking. I noticed that the patchwork on my pocket was a little crooked, so I wanted to straighten that out. Better. And this next step is very important. Make sure you take your zipper pull and pull it in towards the middle, and then you can clip that spot, because once you sew over this edge here, you won't be able to get your zipper pull to slide across it. So now I'm going to sew down this edge here, right here, across the bottom, and up this edge here, an 1/8 inch away from the edge of the material. Now you're ready to use some scissors and cut the extra parts of your zipper off. Now, if for some reason you accidentally cut this off and realize, oops, you forgot to move your zipper pull, here is how you fix it. So I've got another zipper here, and I just cut off the stops as an example. I've got my zipper pull pulled off, So what you want to do is pull the zipper apart a little bit and take your fingernail or some needle nose pliers and just pull up some of that plastic from the zipper. And you want to do that on both sides. Okay? Then you're going to take your zipper and you're going to insert those plastic ends in each side of the zipper. Okay, once you've got it started and you've got the tails of your zipper pulled through, you should be able to hold on to it and just zip the pull right back on. That's how you repair a zipper with a missing zipper pull. So thankfully I remembered to move it back this time. So we are good to go. Okay. Now we're ready to go back to the sewing machine. And I'm switching back to my 1/4 inch foot. And we're ready to start adding the binding. So I like to flip it over batting side up, making sure that my vinyl pouch is facing away from me. And I'll take my binding that's already been pressed in half. I'm going to line the raw edges up with the edge of my clutch, making sure that this tail extends past the center line a couple of inches. And I'm going to start all the way down on this corner. We want to leave as much loose as possible for joining the binding ends. So I'm going to stitch about 1/4 inch away from the edge, leave my needle down, then I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to sew straight out to the point. You see that? Okay. Now I'm going to take my binding strip and I'm going to pull it away from me, lining this raw edge up with the edge of my clutch. And then I'm going to fold it back towards me, making a fold that is even with this top edge. And that'll help give us a nice sharp point or sharp miter on our binding. So now we're just going to go sew straight to the other corner and repeat the same thing. Once I made it around this last corner, I only sewed about 1 inch, maybe just a little over 1 inch down, just to leave plenty of room to work on joining our ends. So now I'm going to take my fabric scissors and I'm going to cut my binding about 1 inch past my center mark. Then I'm going to lay a quilting ruler on top of it, lining the edge of the ruler up with the end of my binding. I'm going to fold this binding over until I get to the 2 1/4 inch point. And I'm going to finger press that there. And that's going to give us a line that we can see. And I'm going to just cut directly on that line. And that's scrap. Then I'm going to take my left binding piece and I'm going to open it up flat, so I'm looking at the wrong side, and I'm going to line up my 45-degree mark on my ruler with the edge of the binding, and I'm going to mark with a pen. See? Okay. Now I'm going to take the right end of the binding. I'm going to twist it away from me and open it up so the right side is up, and I'm going to put the right sides of the binding together. When I'm doing this part, I find it helpful to kind of like pinch these sides closed between my legs, or get your strips oriented even if they aren't perfectly aligned. Just hold that with a pin real quick and close the snaps, and that will let you get these ends lined up without tension on it, and without those ends wanting to run away from you. Lulu, get down. Not now, Lulu. No. Alright. I like to put 4 pins in it to hold it in place, and then I'm just going to sew directly on that line. Alright, now we can pull these pins out, and I'm just going to cut this fabric approximately 1/4 of an inch away from my line. Open my clutch back up. I'm just going to finger press this seam open where we joined the bindings and lay it flat. But before we sew it down, I'm going to position my felt in place. And now I'm just going to sew 1/4 of an inch away from the edge all the way down. Alright, now we're ready to flip back over to our front. We're going to pull this binding around to the front, and starting close to one edge, just pull the binding around and clip it in place. I like to get the sides all clipped first and then come back and do the corners. So for the corners, what you want to do is fold one end in flat, pulling the point up straight, then place your finger close to that edge and fold it down, and that'll get you a nice 45-degree angle. And then place a clip right on top of that. And I'm just going to do that same thing all the way around. If you want to add a personalized label, now is the time to do it. So I've got these labels from Ever Emblem that have my company name on them, but you could also have personalized labels with just your name on them to identify your clutch as yours. So I'm just going to take that label, fold it in half, and tuck it under the binding, and put a binding clip over it to hold it in place. Now we are ready to go to the sewing machine. And we're just going to sew the binding down as close to the edge of the binding as you're comfortable with. And you're going to sew until you just barely have your needle piercing the binding on this side. Stop with the needle down and rotate and keep going. Now I've got this pair of angled tweezers. I've had it for several years. It came in a craft tweezers set, I think. But these work really well for helping me to keep the corners folded down just by pressing down on it as it's going through the sewing machine needle, as it's going under the needle. We're just going to keep doing that for all four corners. And once you get back to the other end, you just stitch over your stitching about an inch. And now I'm just going to flip it over to the other side and get rid of any fuzzies or stray threads that have gotten stuck to my batting. Now I can snap it closed. The zipper works. I've got my vinyl pocket, then I've got my back pocket. I'm ready to just add some zipper fold bling to it and toss it with my project bag and get stitching. So from just one charm pack, I was able to get one medium-sized project bag, one small project bag, and a cross-stitch clutch. All from just one charm pack, and they all coordinate. Or alternatively, you can get one large project bag and one cross-stitch clutch out of just one charm pack. So that's one reason I love using charm packs, and then just combining it with a little bit of yardage for my binding and the other two cross-stitch clutch pieces, as well as some lining for my project bags, and to just keep everything coordinating and pretty and nice. Thank you for joining me today making your patchwork cross-stitch clutch. I hope you enjoy using it in your stitchy bag to hold all of your floss and needles and thread. If you do have any questions at all, please feel free to contact me at starlightstitchingco@outlook.com, or on Instagram at starlightstitchingco, or via conversation on Etsy. Thank you.